You're not tired because your body is weak. You're tired because your life is out of alignment. You wake up already feeling late, not late for anything specific, just late in general, as if life started moving before you were ready and never slowed down again. Your mind opens before your eyes do, racing through unfinished tasks, unanswered messages, expectations you didn't choose but somehow agreed to carry. You move through the day, chasing progress, scrolling for relief, drowning in noise, and when night finally comes, even rest feels shallow. You sleep, but you don't recover. We call this burnout. But long before burnout became a modern diagnosis, one man would have called it something else entirely. Miyamoto Musashi would have said you are tired because you are walking in too many directions at once, because your actions, values, and attention are scattered, because you are spending your energy on things that are not truly yours. Musashi lived in constant hardship. He fought over 60 duels, many to the death. He trained relentlessly, traveled endlessly, slept on floors, ate little, owned almost nothing. By modern standards, his life should have destroyed him. Yet history remembers him not as exhausted, but as sharp, focused, and internally calm until the end of his life. This wasn't because he did less. It was because he lived in alignment. While the modern world spins endlessly, chasing pleasure, validation, distraction, and approval, Musashi walked a single path. He chose it early, he committed to it fully, and that commitment became a source of energy so stable that exhaustion could not take root. This is not a story about discipline for its own sake. It is not about grinding harder or pushing past your limits. It is about ending the quiet, internal war that is draining you every day. Chapter 1. The exact moment you lost your energy. You weren't always like this. There was a time when effort felt exciting, when learning pulled you forward instead of weighing you down, when challenges lit something inside you rather than exhausting it. You remember that version of yourself, even if it feels like someone else's life now. Back then, you didn't need constant motivation. You didn't need reminders to care. You acted because what you were doing felt connected to who you were. Then, slowly, almost invisibly, something changed. You began chasing goals that didn't come from you. Goals borrowed from comparison, from expectations, from what looked successful on the outside. You started measuring your progress against other people's timelines. You began saying yes, out of obligation, instead of conviction. You started living reactively, responding to demands, notifications, opinions, rather than choosing direction. That was the moment your energy began to leak, not all at once, not dramatically, in small, almost unnoticeable ways. You took on responsibilities that didn't matter to you. You held on to relationships that drained you because letting go felt uncomfortable. You overthought simple decisions because you were afraid of choosing wrong. You tried to be everything for everyone while slowly becoming absent from yourself. Energy doesn't disappear. It gets fragmented, and fragmentation is exhausting. Musashi understood this before most people ever do. At just 13 years old, he fought his first duel against an experienced samurai named Arima Kihei and won. By every cultural standard of the time, this should have been a moment of celebration, a story to tell, a reputation to build. Instead, Musashi went home alone. No praise, no validation, no victory parade, just silence. In that silence, he recognized something crucial. The moment you fight for approval, you weaken yourself. Approval divides attention. Validation fractures intent. The second you begin acting to be seen, part of your energy leaves the action and turns inward, watching, judging, adjusting, performing. You are no longer fully present. Musashi didn't fight to impress others. He fought to understand himself. That distinction changed everything. Because when you know exactly why you are doing something, effort stops draining you. When your actions are aligned with your inner direction, energy circulates instead of leaking. Now compare that to how most people live today. Your attention is pulled in dozens of directions at once. You scroll through lives you're not living. You absorb opinions you didn't ask for. You commit to obligations that don't move you forward. You chase metrics that don't satisfy you. You hesitate because you're afraid of being judged. You over-explain because you want to be understood. You overwork because you want to feel worthy. Each one seems harmless on its own. Together, they hollow you out. You're not tired because you do too much. You're tired because you do too much that doesn't belong to you. Every unnecessary task, every fake obligation, every conversation you endure instead of choosing, every scroll meant to numb instead of restore. They all take a small piece of your energy. Over time, there's nothing left. Musashi would say your exhaustion is not physical, it is spiritual misalignment. You are fighting battles that are not yours, carrying weights you never needed to pick up, living a life shaped by reaction instead of intention. The solution is not more rest. Rest helps the body. Alignment restores the spirit. Alignment begins with a single, uncomfortable question. What actually matters to me? Not what looks impressive, not what earns approval, not what keeps me busy. What feels true, even if it's quiet, even if it's unpopular, even if it's hard. Musashi chose his path early and removed everything that didn't serve it. That choice didn't limit him. It freed him. It gave his energy direction, and energy with direction does not burn out. Right now, your energy is scattered, pulled outward, spent on noise. The first step is not doing more. It is choosing less, choosing what deserves your effort and letting the rest fall away without guilt. That decision alone doesn't fix everything, but it stops the bleeding. And when the bleeding stops, strength slowly returns. Not as excitement, not as motivation, but as a quiet sense of steadiness you may not have felt in years. That is where Musashi began. And that is where your path back to energy begins, too. Once you recognize that your exhaustion comes from misalignment, something unsettling happens. You can't go back to pretending. You begin to notice how heavy your days feel, not because of the work itself, but because of everything wrapped around it. The mental noise before you begin, the doubt that follows you while you work, the pressure to justify, compare, explain, and prove. You realize that the tiredness isn't coming from effort, it's coming from resistance, from dragging yourself through a life cluttered with things that don't belong to your path. This is where most people stop. Not because they don't understand the problem, but because the solution feels like loss. Alignment demands subtraction, and subtraction feels dangerous in a world that teaches you to add, collect, accumulate, and optimize endlessly. But this is exactly where the second lesson begins. Chapter 2. The Weight of Carrying Too Much Miyamoto. Musashi lived as if every unnecessary thing was a liability. He owned almost nothing. He traveled light, often barefoot, sometimes without even a change of clothes. He slept on wooden floors. He ate simply. He avoided luxury, not because it was immoral, but because it was distracting. He famously wrote, "Do nothing that is of no use." To a modern mind, that sounds extreme, cold, almost hostile to comfort. But Musashi wasn't rejecting life. He was protecting his energy. He understood something that modern life constantly hides from you. Everything you carry has a cost. Every possession demands maintenance. Every obligation demands attention. Every attachment creates fear of loss. And every extra thought splits your focus. In battle, that split second of distraction meant death. So he removed anything that wasn't essential. Now look honestly at your life. Your phone vibrates constantly. Your mind is filled with half-finished thoughts. Your calendar is crowded with commitments you didn't consciously choose. Your attention is divided between messages, content, conversations, and comparisons that don't move you forward. You wake up already overloaded. You are not tired because you work too much. You are tired because you carry too much. Too many responsibilities that don't align with who you are. Too many expectations borrowed from others. Too many mental tabs left open day after day. Each one drains a small amount of energy. You barely notice it happening. But by the end of the day, you feel empty and can't explain why. That's because the cost was spread across hundreds of tiny leaks. Musashi understood that simplicity was not an aesthetic choice. It was a strategic one. He didn't remove excess because it looked noble. He removed excess because clarity was survival. Your life may not depend on winning a duel, but your energy depends on something just as fragile, attention, and attention cannot survive clutter. The modern world encourages accumulation at every level. More information, more commitments, more opinions, more stimulation. You are taught that doing more makes you valuable, that staying busy makes you important. That availability is the same as purpose. It isn't. Busyness without direction is one of the fastest ways to exhaust yourself. Musashi would look at modern life and immediately recognize the problem. Not stress, not pressure, noise of obligations, noise of expectations, noise of endless input. Noise is heavier than effort. Effort, when aligned, strengthens you. Noise weakens you even when you're resting. This is why scrolling doesn't restore you. This is why entertainment often leaves you more tired than before. This is why days filled with meetings feel heavier than days filled with meaningful work. Your nervous system never gets to settle. Musashi protected stillness the way others protected wealth, because stillness returns energy to its source. Carrying too much doesn't only apply to objects and schedules, it applies to identity. You carry versions of yourself that are no longer real. The version that must always be agreeable, the version that must always succeed, the version that must never disappoint anyone. Each role costs energy to maintain. Musashi refused unnecessary identities. He didn't try to be admired. He didn't try to be liked. He didn't try to be understood. He chose to be precise. Precision conserves energy. Trying to be everything drains it. Ask yourself this, honestly. Which parts of your life exist only because you're afraid to let them go? Which obligations would disappear if you stopped explaining yourself? Which habits remain not because they help you, but because they're familiar? Musashi would say, if it does not serve your path, it weakens you. That doesn't mean your path is rigid or narrow. It means it is chosen. Letting go feels uncomfortable because it creates space, and space forces you to face yourself without distraction. That's why people avoid it. They'd rather stay busy than still. They'd rather feel exhausted than exposed. But clarity lives in that space. Musashi walked alone, not because he hated people, but because solitude sharpened awareness. Silence removed distortion. Simplicity restored alignment. You don't need to abandon society to learn this lesson. You need to subtract consciously. Start with your environment. Remove what doesn't need to be there. Clean not for appearance, but for mental relief. Then look at your commitments. Which ones exist out of guilt instead of choice? Which ones drain you without moving you forward? Then look at your inputs. How much of what you consume adds nothing but noise? How often do you allow distraction to replace rest? Each subtraction returns a small amount of energy, not excitement, not motivation, relief, and relief is the beginning of strength. Simplicity is often misunderstood as weakness. People assume that doing less means becoming less capable, that narrowing focus limits potential, that saying no closes doors. Musashi knew the opposite was true. Simplicity concentrates power. A scattered mind hesitates. A focused mind cuts cleanly. Musashi did not pursue every opportunity. He pursued mastery. He did not chase multiple paths. He walked one deeply. That depth gave him flexibility others didn't have. Right now, your energy is split. Part of you wants growth. Part of you wants comfort. Part of you wants approval. Part of you wants rest. They pull against each other constantly. That internal conflict is exhausting. Alignment resolves that conflict by choosing direction. Not perfectly, not dramatically, but deliberately. When your actions point in the same direction, energy stops leaking. Effort becomes lighter. Fatigue becomes honest instead of chronic. There is a moment, if you do this sincerely, when something unexpected happens. You feel lighter, not euphoric, not inspired, just lighter. As if you've been carrying a weight you didn't realize was optional. Musashi lived lightly because he refused to carry what wasn't necessary, not possessions, not expectations, not borrowed goals. He didn't eliminate joy, he eliminated distraction. That is why he could train endlessly without burning out. That is why his mind stayed sharp when others collapsed. That is why his life, though harsh, never became chaotic. Your tiredness is not a failure, it's feedback. It's telling you that your life is overloaded with things that don't belong to you. Begin cutting them away. Not angrily, not impulsively, quietly, cleanly, one piece at a time. And beneath the weight you've been carrying, you'll rediscover something you thought was gone. Natural energy. The kind that doesn't need stimulation. The kind that doesn't depend on motivation. The kind that comes from walking in one direction instead of 10. That is the second lesson. And without it, no amount of rest will ever be enough. By the time most people realize they are exhausted, they make the same mistake. They look for motivation. They search for inspiration, for the right mood, for the moment when effort feels light again. They wait to feel ready, energized, confident, and while they wait, their strength continues to decay. This is where Musashi separated himself from almost everyone who ever lived. He did not trust motivation. Chapter 3. Training without motivation, Miyamoto. Musashi never built his life on how he felt. If he had, he would have died young. Motivation is unreliable. It rises and falls with sleep, weather, praise, failure, and mood. In a duel, waiting to feel ready means you don't move at all. In life, waiting for motivation quietly becomes a habit of delay. Musashi understood this early. He trained every day, not because he felt inspired, but because training was who he was. Rain, heat, hunger, exhaustion, none of it mattered. He did not ask whether he wanted to train. He trained because it was the path he had chosen. This is a crucial distinction. Most people treat effort as something they do. Musashi treated effort as something he was. That difference changes everything. Modern burnout is often misunderstood as overwork, but in reality, most people aren't exhausted from doing too much. They're exhausted from negotiating with themselves all day long. Should I do it now or later? Do I feel like this today? Is this the best use of my time? What if I fail? What if it doesn't matter? That internal debate consumes enormous energy. Musashi eliminated the debate. Training was not optional. It was not emotional. It was not dramatic. It was rhythm. And rhythm does not exhaust you. Think about the things you do effortlessly every day: walking, breathing, brushing your teeth. You don't need motivation for these things. They don't drain you because they are integrated into your identity. Musashi treated training the same way. He did not rely on peaks of intensity. He relied on consistency of presence. This is why he could repeat a single strike thousands of times without boredom destroying him. Repetition did not drain him because it removed decision-making. Once something becomes rhythm, it stops demanding willpower. Most people try to force discipline through motivation. They hype themselves up, push hard for a short period, then collapse. That cycle creates exhaustion, guilt, and inconsistency. Musashi avoided that cycle entirely. He once wrote that there is more than one path to the top of the mountain. Many people misunderstand this line. They think it means flexibility or freedom to drift. What Musashi meant was deeper. He meant that mastery is not dependent on mood or preference. You don't climb by waiting for ideal conditions. You climb by moving in rhythm with the mountain itself. Motivation is a feeling. Rhythm is a structure. Feelings fluctuate. Structures endure. When your life is built on feeling, you burn out. When your life is built on rhythm, you stabilize. This is where most people fail. They treat discipline as punishment, as force, as something heavy. And because it feels heavy, they avoid it, or they push too hard and break. Musashi never punished himself. He simply avoids negotiation. Negotiation is exhausting. Every time you wake up and argue with yourself about whether to train, whether to work, whether to start, you drain energy before the day even begins. Musashi removed that drain. He didn't ask, "Do I feel like it?" He asked, "Is this my path?" Once the answer was yes, the action followed automatically. This is why he could live with so little external stimulation. His energy didn't come from excitement, it came from certainty. Certainty doesn't mean confidence, it means commitment. You don't need to believe you'll succeed to act. You need to decide you will act regardless. That decision alone eliminates half of your exhaustion. Look at your own life honestly. How much energy do you spend convincing yourself to begin? How often do you wait for the right mood before doing what you already know matters? How many times do you postpone because the task feels boring, uncomfortable, or unrewarding? That waiting is not neutral. It drains you. Musashi trained when it was boring, especially when it was boring, because boredom is where identity is forged. Anyone can act when they feel inspired. Very few can act when nothing inside them wants to move. That is where strength is built. There are records of Musashi spending entire days perfecting a single motion, not to show anyone, not to prepare for a specific duel, but because refinement itself was the practice. He wasn't chasing improvement, he was maintaining alignment. That distinction matters. Improvement is future-oriented. Alignment is present-oriented. When you chase improvement, you are always dissatisfied with where you are. That dissatisfaction quietly drains energy. When you focus on alignment, you bring full attention to what is happening now. Attention restores energy. Modern life trains you to live in bursts, work intensely, then collapse. Get motivated, then burn out. Push hard, then escape. This creates a cycle of exhaustion that feels inevitable. Musashi lived in flow, not bursts. Flow is sustainable because it does not rely on adrenaline. It relies on continuity. When effort becomes continuous, it stops feeling like effort. This is why people who train consistently feel less tired than people who train sporadically. This is why disciplined routines often feel lighter than chaotic freedom. Structure protects energy. You might resist this idea because it sounds rigid, but Musashi was not rigid. He was adaptable precisely because his foundation was stable. When your actions are anchored in rhythm, you don't panic when conditions change. You adjust without drama. You move without hesitation. Motivation-based people freeze when motivation disappears. Rhythm-based people continue. Here is the uncomfortable truth Musashi lived by. If you wait to feel like doing the work, you will always be tired. If you remove the option not to do it, energy returns. Not instantly, not magically, gradually. At first, acting without motivation feels heavy. Because you are breaking an old habit, your nervous system resists, your mind protests. But if you persist, something changes. The resistance fades. The effort smooths out. The action becomes normal, and normal actions do not exhaust you. This is why Musashi could fight, write, paint, and train without burning out. He did not rely on emotional fuel, he relied on identity. He did not say, "I am motivated today." He lived as if, "This is simply what I do." That identity freed him from constant decision-making. Decision fatigue is one of the greatest hidden sources of exhaustion in modern life. Musashi had very few decisions to make. He had already decided. Ask yourself this. What would change if you stopped negotiating with yourself? What if training was not optional? What if your craft was not dependent on mood? What if starting did not require inspiration? This does not mean becoming harsh or joyless. It means becoming steady. And steadiness is the opposite of burnout. Musashi did not seek comfort. But he also did not seek suffering. He sought clarity. Clarity removes friction. Friction creates fatigue. When your actions match your values, effort feels clean. When they don't, every movement feels heavy. You are tired not because you lack discipline. You are tired because your discipline is conditional. Conditional discipline drains energy because it demands constant negotiation. Unconditional commitment restores energy because it removes internal conflict. This is the heart of Chapter 3. Stop waiting to feel ready. Stop chasing motivation. Stop asking how you feel before you act. Choose your path. Commit to it. Move in rhythm with it. At first, this feels difficult. Then it feels neutral. Eventually, it feels natural. And when effort becomes natural, burnout loses its grip. Musashi did not outwork everyone. He outlasted them, not through force, but through rhythm. That is the third lesson, and without it, alignment will never hold. By the time most people reach the edge of burnout, they believe the problem is effort. They think they're pushing too hard, trying too much, caring too deeply. But Musashi would have said the opposite. You are not exhausted because you care too much. You are exhausted because you care about the wrong outcomes. Chapter 4. Detachment from Results. Miyamoto. Musashi understood something that feels almost impossible in the modern world. Results are a trap, not because results don't matter, but because attachment to them poisons energy at the source. Musashi lived in a time where losing often meant death, and yet he approached battle without clinging to victory. That sounds contradictory until you understand what he was actually doing. He was not indifferent. He was precise. Precision requires freedom. Attachment creates tension, and tension is exhausting. After decades of undefeated duels, Musashi faced one of the most famous swordsmen of his era, Sasaki Kojiro. Kojiro was known for speed, elegance, and flawless technique. Their duel was arranged on a small island in 1612. It became legend not because of spectacle, but because of contrast. Kojiro arrived early, clean robes, polished blade, composed confidence. Musashi arrived late, unwashed, calm, carrying a wooden sword carved from a boat oar. The duel lasted seconds. One strike, Kojiro fell. Musashi turned and left without a word. No celebration, no explanation, no acknowledgement of the crowd. Because the outcome was never the point. Clarity was. Musashi did not win because he wanted to win more. He won because he was less attached. That distinction is everything. Attachment to results creates internal pressure. Pressure to succeed, pressure to prove something, pressure to justify effort. That pressure tightens the body, clouds the mind, and drains energy before the action even begins. You feel it every day. You work, but your mind is already judging the outcome. You train, but you're calculating progress instead of focusing on form. You speak, but you're thinking about how you'll be perceived. You are never fully present because part of you is standing outside the moment, watching, evaluating, measuring. That split costs energy. Musashi refused that split. He trained without thinking about victory. He fought without rehearsing outcomes. He wrote without worrying how he would be remembered. His focus was always on the moment directly in front of him. That focus created stillness. Stillness conserved energy. Modern culture trains you to live for results, numbers, metrics, likes, titles, recognition. From the moment you wake up, you are told, explicitly or subtly, that your worth is tied to outcomes. This creates a dangerous loop. You act to achieve a result. You tie your peace to that result. You fear losing it. Fear drains energy faster than effort ever could. Musashi cut this loop at its root. He wrote that you must not seek pleasure for its own sake, nor avoid discomfort for fear of pain. Both create attachment. Both weaken you. Detachment is not apathy. Detachment is freedom. When you act without clinging to outcome, your movements become clean. Your decisions become lighter. Your mind becomes available to reality instead of fantasy, and energy flows where attention is undivided. Think about how exhausting it is to care too much about how something turns out. You replay conversations, you second-guess decisions, you rehearse future reactions, you imagine failure before it happens. None of that effort changes the outcome, but it consumes energy relentlessly. Musashi would have called this wasted motion. In swordsmanship, wasted motion is fatal. In life, it is quietly corrosive. He trained himself to act fully, then release. Once the strike was made, it was finished. Once the decision was taken, it was done. No mental residue. That mental cleanliness is what allowed him to endure. Detachment does not mean lack of ambition. Musashi was deeply committed to mastery. He refined his skill obsessively. He pursued excellence relentlessly. But he did not confuse excellence with validation. He did not need to avoid failure to preserve his identity. That is the source of modern exhaustion, tying identity to outcomes. When your sense of self depends on results, every effort becomes heavy, every action carries existential weight. Musashi removed that weight. He was not trying to become someone through victory. He was expressing who he already was through action. That inversion changes everything. Ask yourself this honestly. How much of your energy is spent worrying about how things will turn out? How often do you hesitate because you're afraid of failing, looking foolish, or not being rewarded? How many actions do you abandon because the outcome is uncertain? That uncertainty isn't telling you to stop, it's revealing attachment. And attachment is exhausting. Musashi believed the highest level of skill was acting without internal disturbance, not numbness, not aggression, stillness. Stillness does not come from suppressing desire. It comes from seeing clearly that outcomes are temporary, unstable, and ultimately uncontrollable. You can influence them. You cannot own them. Once you accept that, effort becomes lighter. You still care, you still try, but you no longer bleed energy into fear. Modern productivity culture teaches you to optimize results. Musashi teaches you to optimize presence. Presence is renewable. Results are not. When you anchor your energy to presence, you can act indefinitely. When you anchor it to outcomes, exhaustion is inevitable. This is why people who love the process appear tireless. It's not because they work less. It's because they are not dragging the future into the present. Musashi never dragged the future into the moment. He arrived empty, and emptiness gave him speed. There is another hidden cost of attachment: comparison. When outcomes matter too much, you constantly measure yourself against others. Who is ahead? Who is behind? Who is winning? Comparison fragments attention. It creates tension where none is needed. Musashi did not compare paths. He walked his own. That singularity preserved energy. To detach from results does not mean you stop setting goals. It means you stop living inside them. You choose a direction. You act with precision. You release the rest. This does not make you passive. It makes you dangerous in the best sense, because nothing can be used against you. Praise doesn't inflate you. Failure doesn't crush you. Your energy remains intact. This is why Musashi could walk away after victory. He was not carrying the weight of proving anything. He had already won the only battle that mattered, the one inside himself. If you want to reclaim your energy, this is unavoidable. You must loosen your grip on outcomes. Not because they are meaningless, but because clinging to them makes you weak. Work deeply, train seriously, commit fully, then let go. The moment you act, return your attention to the present. Energy flows where resistance ends. Most people burn out because they are fighting two battles at once: the work itself and the story about what it means. Musashi fought only one. That is why he endured. That is the fourth lesson. And without it, discipline becomes pressure, rhythm becomes rigidity, and alignment collapses under expectation. Detach from results, and watch how much energy returns the moment you stop squeezing life too tightly. By the end of his life, Musashi was no longer fighting anyone. No rivals, no duels, no audience. And yet, This was when his understanding of energy became complete. Because what remains when all external battles end is the only battle that ever mattered. Chapter 5. The Stillness That Cannot Be Exhausted. Miyamoto Musashi spent his final years alone in a cave called Gando. He was old, ill, and close to death. The world he once walked through, filled with danger, blood, travel, and uncertainty, had finally fallen silent around him, and in that silence he wrote his final teaching. Not about swords, not about enemies, not about victory, but about how to live without inner conflict. This is where everything he learned converged. Musashi understood that true exhaustion does not come from effort, discipline, or struggle. It comes from division, from a mind pulled in opposing directions, from wanting rest while chasing validation, from seeking peace while clinging to outcomes, from craving simplicity while feeding distraction. A divided life is an exhausting life. So in his final years, Musashi refined the one thing that could never be taken from him: inner stillness. Stillness is often misunderstood. People think it means inactivity, withdrawal, weakness. Musashi meant the opposite. Stillness is the absence of internal resistance. It is the state where your body moves, your hands work, your voice speaks, but your mind is not fighting itself. In combat, this meant reacting without hesitation. In art, it meant creating without self-doubt. In life, it meant acting without inner noise. That kind of stillness cannot be exhausted, because it does not consume energy, it generates it. Most modern exhaustion comes from constant inner motion. You wake up already thinking. You eat while distracted. You work while worrying. You rest while scrolling. Your body never stops moving, and neither does your mind. Even when you sit still, you are mentally running. Musashi lived differently. Between duels, he would sit by rivers, observe nature, paint, carve wood, or simply be silent. These were not escapes from life. They were practices of alignment. He believed the way of the sword and the way of art were the same. Both required presence. Both required calm. Both required the courage to stay in the moment without fleeing. He famously wrote, "From one thing, know 10,000 things." What he meant was this: master stillness in one area of life, and it spreads everywhere. If you can move your body while keeping your mind calm, you can live indefinitely without burning out. Look at your own life. When was the last time you did something with full attention, not multitasking, not half listening, not checking something else, just doing one thing? Most people can't remember. That absence of presence is not neutral. It is draining you, because when your attention is fractured, energy leaks. Musashi trained himself to place his attention fully wherever he was. When he walked, he walked. When he trained, he trained. When he rested, he rested. No overlap, no mental residue. This is why his energy lasted. Stillness does not mean slowness. Musashi was known for speed and decisiveness, but his speed came from calm, not urgency. His decisiveness came from clarity, not impulse. Urgency burns energy. Calm conserves it. You live in urgency. Deadlines, messages, notifications, fear of falling behind, fear of missing out, fear of being irrelevant. Urgency keeps your nervous system in constant alert. Musashi refused urgency. Even in life or death duels, he remained unhurried, because haste creates mistakes, and mistakes cost more energy than patience ever could. In Gando, Musashi wrote his final principles for living. They were not comforting, they were not motivational, they were clear. He warned against seeking pleasure for its own sake, against clinging to comfort, against distraction, against dependence on external validation, not because these things are evil, but because they scatter the mind, and a scattered mind cannot sustain energy. He believed that when your mind, body, and purpose align, effort becomes clean, movement becomes efficient, life becomes lighter. This alignment was his true secret, not strength, not toughness, Alignment. The modern world sells you substitutes for energy, caffeine, entertainment, stimulation, endless novelty. These give you spikes, not stability. They mask exhaustion instead of resolving it. Musashi would say you don't need more stimulation, you need fewer contradictions. You say you want peace, but live in noise. You say you want focus, but invite distraction. You say you want energy, but chase validation. Each contradiction creates friction. Friction creates fatigue. Resolve the contradiction, and energy returns naturally. By the end of his life, Musashi needed almost nothing. No audience, no approval, no comfort. He had clarity. Clarity is not excitement, it is steadiness. And steadiness is what allows a human being to endure. If you want to stop being tired, this is the final lesson. Stop living a divided life. Stop saying yes to what drains you. Stop chasing outcomes that don't matter. Stop negotiating with yourself about what you already know is right. Choose your path, not perfectly, not loudly, but honestly. Walk it with rhythm. Protect it with simplicity. Move through it with stillness. When your actions match your values, energy stops leaking. When your mind stops fighting your direction, effort becomes light. When your life points in one direction, exhaustion loses its grip. Musashi's secret was never hidden in ancient scrolls. It was visible in every choice he made. He chose simplicity over comfort, rhythm over motivation, stillness over noise, purpose over pleasure. He mastered himself, and in doing so, he mastered his energy. You are not tired because you are weak. You are tired because you have been pulled away from who you are. You can return, not by resting more, not by consuming more, but by cutting away everything that is of no use. Align your actions with your path, and one day, like the old swordsman in the cave, you will realize something quietly powerful. You were never out of energy, you were out of alignment. Find your path, walk it fully, and nothing will exhaust you again. Thank you for watching this video. Click here to watch another video that might interest you.